everybody, and welcome to Monday the 27th of July. It is a wonderfully miserable day here in Armidale. We've had some really good rain over the weekend. I'm hoping others have had a good deal of the wet stuff, although I'm really well aware that that Newcastle and Sydney and the South Coast have some flooding issues. So, you know, of course, we can never get just enough. There's always got to get too much of a good thing. Anyway, good morning to everybody who's joining us this morning. I'm Bronwyn Pearson. For those who don't know me, I'm from Pinnacle People Solutions, and welcome to our weekly Facebook Live update to give you a COVID-19 update on issues and matters affecting business owners, their managers and staff. So our company, Pinnacle People Solutions, provides human resource services, advice, support, solutions, strategies, you name it, to regionally based small to medium-sized businesses and not-for-profit organisations. And we are here to help you and your business, not only through these challenging COVID-19 times, but all the time. So please ask any questions that you might have as we go along, and I'll do my best to answer those. Outside of this, you can contact myself or my team anytime via Facebook, email or telephone, as well as YouTube, website, LinkedIn. You'll find our contact details, and thank you, team. I can see they've just popped those up there. Thank you so much. The details are in the comments for you. So just to give a bit of context, I suppose, particularly for those who are joining us for the first time, and good morning to those who are extending their good wishes this morning. It's lovely to have you back with us again. For those who are joining us for the first time, we had been doing these Facebook Live updates daily, actually, every weekday from the beginning of COVID for a period of about 18 weeks. And for the last 3 weeks, we've been doing them weekly on a Monday morning at 9:15. With updates for business owners and operators on dealing with COVID-19 and its effects on business staff and the local communities, as well as more information, general information about a wide variety of staff-related topics. So we know that the pandemic isn't over, goodness knows we know that, and it certainly won't be for quite some time. But we are all trying to learn to live with the crisis, up and down as it is, and find our new normal. Obviously, we continue to be on this journey with you. We, being Pinnacle People Solutions, we ourselves have been coping with the fluctuations and the changes, transitioning to work from home and since back to the office in a staged way, managing our health and safety obligations, consulting with our staff, trying to keep all our balls in the air, change our service delivery as our clients are needing that to be different. It's been a privilege to be with you and to help your business, you and your business survive, and for a number of businesses thrive in what are unbelievably challenging times. Look, the triple whammy of drought, bushfire and now COVID-19 has hit regional and remote Australia particularly hard, but with the strength and resilience that we are seeing on a daily basis in businesses, we will come through and through the other side of all of this. So onwards and upwards, and inwards and outwards, as my son is fond of saying. Okay, so let's have a look at some things that are of particular significance for business owners, staff, and managers this particular week or in the past week. I want to remind you about the $3,000 New South Wales State Government grants. They opened on the 1st of July. They remain open until the 16th of August. We will give you the link for that. The grant is intended to assist businesses reopening from restrictions imposed as a result of the COVID-19 panic, and the grant is for safely reopening or upscaling operations. So we'll give you the link to that shortly. And I would encourage you to go up and have a look. Any grant opportunities we're going to keep reminding you about mercilessly every time we see you via these means and others. And it's really important for you to go up and have a look at that criteria and just see. You might be very surprised to find that that you are eligible when you didn't think perhaps that you were. So thank you so much, team, for popping that link up in the chat screen. Feel free to get up there and have a look. Now, in terms of update from the past week, what I would encourage everybody to do, if you haven't already, is to have a look on any of our sort of pages, if you like. So up on our website, here in Facebook, on our YouTube channel, on our LinkedIn page, and you will find all of the webinars that we've started to do weekly on a Thursday. Last Thursday's webinar, I actually did a deep dive into the economic and fiscal outlook, including the changes to JobKeeper and JobSeeker and the introduction of Job Trainer, and what that means for businesses. So if you haven't seen that and the fact sheet associated with it, don't hesitate to get up there and have a look at that. I'm not going to revisit today the details in that. I might do a deeper dive into the job-related programs in another broadcast, but I would encourage you to get up there and have a look at that, and to talk to us if you'd like further advice as to how those changes might well impact on your business. So in terms of some of the updates we should all be aware of, so police in Queensland have begun enforcing new restrictions on visitors from New South Wales, and from today, travellers who visited the Western Sydney city of Fairfield and are not a Queensland resident will be turned away at the border. Fairfield was added to the hotspot list last week, along with Sydney's Campbelltown and Liverpool and the state of Victoria, of course. Meanwhile, time is ticking for South Australians in Victoria to return home. South Australian police say that residents have been given as much time as possible to get home from Victoria before border restrictions are tightened. You will, however, be turned away from Wednesday if you don't have an essential traveller status and want to re-enter the state from Victoria. So you've got from now till Wednesday. Exemptions will still be allowed in cross-border communities. So go up to your relevant state advisory site for your state government and have a look at what's required and what the restrictions are and how they might impact you. What we did get is notification from Woolworths to New South Wales residents over the weekend, advising that they have updated their advice to all stores in the local government areas of Fairfield and Liverpool in Sydney, with a close eye on other areas as the situation evolves. And we know that we've had a couple of positive tests this morning in Potts Point, and also I think in I'm not sure where the other one is, so I'm not going to speculate, in the Greater Sydney area. So in terms of Woolworths' announcement about updating their advice for stores in Fairfield and Liverpool, and that is across Woolworths, so that includes Metro, BWS, Stan Murphy's and Big W stores. In these areas, these hotspot areas in Sydney and wider Sydney, the Woolworths are strongly encouraging customers to wear a face covering when coming into any of the stores, and they've actually provided their staff with masks to do their work. Look, we haven't seen masks be a compulsory requirement yet in New South Wales, but I suspect that's where we're headed. So interesting that Woolworths have strongly encouraged customers to wear face coverings if they're from any of those hotspot areas in Sydney and entering any of their stores. We've had New South Wales tighten COVID-19 restrictions around higher risk activities, particularly with this new phase of community transmission which has been happening. So from midnight last Friday, the 24th of July, the following rules will be enforced in New South Wales moving forward. So compliance measures introduced to pubs and clubs to pubs will be extended to restaurants, bars, cafes and clubs, and that includes limited group bookings to a maximum of 10 people, mandatory COVID-safe plans and registration as a COVID-safe business, and a digital record must be created within 24 hours of patrons. Weddings and corporate events will be limited to 150 people subject to the 4 square metre rule and registration as a COVID-safe business. Strict COVID-safe plans must be in place and high-risk activities including choirs and dancing must not occur. Funerals and places of worship will be limited to 100 people, subject to the 1 person per 4 square metre rule and a COVID-safe business registration. The rules on gatherings remain the same at this stage. 20 guests inside the home and 20 for gatherings in a public place. However, as the home is a high transmission area, the New South Wales Chief Health Officer has strongly recommended that a COVID-safe precautionary approach of limiting visitors to the home to 10 people as a general principle would be preferred. Not mandatory, but it would be preferred. And the Premier has said that the restriction tightenings coming in as of last Friday were intended to reduce the risk of uncontrollable breakouts and to ensure that New South Wales can remain open for business. And the unfortunate reality is, as all of us know, particularly those of us in business, that unfortunately we have to live with COVID-19 and the way it has changed and continues to change our lives. The rules as they are at the moment and as they will vary across time will give business and the community a degree of certainty into the foreseeable future and will help New South Wales avoid uncontrolled virus spread. That's the intention. Obviously, there are greater investigations, spot checks, vigilance happening now with police and others to ensure that business and industry continue to operate in a COVID-safe way. The intention, certainly from the Deputy Premier, is that measures applying across the state will also work to protect residents in rural and regional New South Wales, because we've seen what's happened at Bateman's Bay, and we want to try and see the economy remain as open as possible in regional areas if that's at all possible. We don't want to see community transmission get to a stage where it's out of control. And so targeting large gatherings, which are high risk settings for transmission of the virus, is an obvious reason why these rules have come in. A reminder for everybody, stay at home if you're not feeling well, get tested if you have any symptoms that could be related to COVID. Maintain physical distancing when you're out and about, 1.5 metres, and ensure good hand hygiene. Incredibly important to continue to do those things. Venues need to be on notice. New South Wales Police, liquor and gaming inspectors and New South Wales health officials are out and about carrying out inspections across the state to ensure that COVID-safe plans are in place, are registered and are being followed. And everybody needs to be on high alert. We all need to be vigilant. So we've had some interesting statistics and some highlights on businesses in the last week and how their response has been to COVID. One of them I noted with interest was Naomi Simpson's Red Balloon. Most people will have heard of the Red Balloon website. When the WHO officially declared COVID-19 a pandemic back in March, traffic to the Red Balloon website plunged from 85,000 visitors to just 8,000. The response of that business, the impact of that was just devastating. And obviously, like a lot of us have as business owners, that business immediately started to take as many costs out of the business as they could, so they could make sure that they had cash for coming out the other side. And a lot of businesses have felt that sensation of freefall during COVID. JobKeeper, as it turned out to be a very big relief for Naomi Simpson and her business, with the stimulus package providing much needed certainty. But obviously with these new infection waves that we've had and we continue to have, and significant revisions and restrictions, particularly those announced to the stimulus package this week, that temporary area of stability has really been shaken. And you know, in some respects, what the government's done is the sort of the easy bit. Not that it's easy. The challenging bit is now unwinding it and working out how to help businesses, big and small, who face an uncertain future as support measures begin to fall away. And lenders have started to have the hard conversations with struggling clients, and we're seeing and talking to a lot of businesses that this describes. So obviously the government faces a delicate balance in terms of supporting the economy in what's been and continues to be a massive crisis, while gradually withdrawing support so more businesses can hopefully stand on their own 2 feet. There are some concerns that the revised eligibility criteria for the job seeker and JobKeeper packages could leave, particularly JobKeeper, could leave some companies victims of their own success, because unlike the first tranche of JobKeeper, any businesses applying for the stimulus to extend beyond September will now be required to show an actual 30 or 50% decline in revenue, depending on what your annual turnover is, rather than just projected. So those who traded above expectations during the shutdown are likely to find themselves ineligible. There is a concern that these changes are going to disproportionately affect middle of the pack businesses that were neither doing well nor doing poorly during the pandemic. And the companies doing okay before COVID might not be able to ride the second wave. And once the cutback to JobKeeper comes in, the reality is going to hit for a lot of those businesses. So what we know is that when the Treasury reviewed the JobKeeper scheme back in June, it showed that 920,000 organisations had signed up for the subsidy, and that those were primarily in the travel, hospitality, arts and retail sectors, the ones who arguably have been the most affected by COVID-19. And that included some big businesses who qualified for the subsidies also. I think it's important for us to be clear about the fact that those middle businesses, and we talk to a lot of them in terms of the ones that are really hanging on, are very much a distinct group aside from the Walking Dead zombie companies, which might have only been propped up by the measures to shield the economy, such as deferred loan payments or temporary exemption from insolvent trading, for example. But there will be companies that won't survive the amendments to JobKeeper, and I think we need to be really pragmatic and realistic about what that's going to look like for businesses. And as I invited last Thursday when I ran the webinar on all of these changes, if you are concerned or you just don't know what the impact's going to be and you're concerned to plan, then please come and talk to us. We would be very happy to help you navigate what is unprecedented and really challenging and difficult times. So it is important that you do the right things that you need to do as an employer. You sure as hell don't want the risk. Not only is it the right thing to do, but you sure as hell don't want the risk associated with fines and other penalties for not doing the right thing. So, and look, many businesses that we've seen in COVID have done a remarkable job to navigate it to this point in time, winding back their cost base, pivoting their businesses, doing work differently, offering different services. How sustainable it's going to be for those businesses to keep that cost base wound down, keeping in mind that the biggest fixed cost for many businesses is rent and staffing, then it's going to be hard. And the banks and government are busy warning us that rescue packages can't save everyone. We know that we're heading into some fairly perilous waters, not that we haven't been in them pretty much since March or earlier for regional and rural areas, given drought and then bushfires and then COVID. I think it's incredibly important to be really mindful about the sorts of changes that are happening and where your business is placed. Obviously, a lot of us in New South Wales are quite nervous about what this might mean for potentially further restrictions in New South Wales and what that might mean for businesses if there is any further period of restrictions or lockdown like we've seen in Victoria, and in fact Victoria are halfway through their 6-week period, and it's quite possible that 6-week period might need to be longer depending on what happens with their COVID numbers, which of course were 459 I think yesterday, and 10 deaths. So we're just going to have to watch very closely to see what's happening in Victoria and in New South Wales. And certainly the threat of, a lockdown 2.0 is weighing very heavily on the minds and practices of business. There are, really divided opinions about whether or not we should take a lighter touch or a heavier touch in terms of lockdown, around the question of the impact it has on job losses. But we have a set of leaders at local, state and federal level that are trying to navigate this, and we will all be watching and waiting to see what we need to do. But in the meantime, on the staffing side, it's really valuable to be thinking about what your options are. It doesn't hurt to have plans A to Z, depending on what you might find your business has to experience. And we can certainly and would be very delighted to help you with that. So okay, let's have a quick look. So we do know that there is a loophole for those who, in the federal government's plan to cut payments by $300 in its multi-billion-dollar JobKeeper scheme, could allow current recipients to maintain their benefits at almost the existing level. Because there is a potential for those now on JobKeeper to claim both JobKeeper and JobSeeker when the cut comes into effect. And we'll give you some more information in respect of that also. But just a reminder that those changes that are coming for the end of September are things that we need to be planning for. You may not have been eligible for JobKeeper before. Maybe with the changes, in fact, you will be. And in fact, maybe now's the time to be looking at that, to see whether you may well have eligibility where you haven't before. But in the vast majority of cases, those who have been eligible will probably find that they're not. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at it in some detail, and we'd be delighted to speak with you about what these implications are going to be for your particular business. But we do know that you're going to need to show a 30%. If your revenue is under $1 billion a year, you are going to have to show a 30% decline in each of the June and September quarters to keep JobKeeper in the December quarter, when the payment will be reduced to $1,200 per eligible staff member. And you must then be able to show that decline in the June, September and December quarters to keep it in the March quarter, when it will be reduced to $1,000. The estimation by the government is that approximately 2.1 million workers will be off the payment as a result, and possibly move across to JobSeeker in that time. So it's all designed to encourage people back to work. That assumes that there is actually jobs that are going to be available for them. So that's going to be a real watch this space. But in the meantime, as businesses, you need to be prepared as much as possible for the kinds of fluctuations that we're seeing, and whether or not you're going to be eligible, and what that means for your cost base, particularly your staffing costs, and what sort of landscape that means you might be facing, and what kind of options you have in respect of that. So get in touch with us. We'd be very happy to have a chat with you, no obligation, and help you through that process of assessment and what you might need to do to plan. Okay, so in terms of takeaways for today's weekly update, we've seen some updated restrictions come into New South Wales from the 24th. I've overviewed those. We've seen changes to JobKeeper and JobSeeker. For the detail of that, please go back and have a look at our webinar from last Thursday. The big piece of advice, I guess, the big ticket items of advice for businesses: get your COVID safe plan done. If you haven't already, register it with the New South Wales government. Make sure that you've got appropriate mechanisms in place to get details of clients and customers as may be required for your particular kind of business and your industry. Review all of your staffing arrangements now. Contracts, position descriptions, policies and procedures. It's incredibly important to have all of those be up to date, flexible, and be in a situation where you can pivot in terms of your staffing profile, numbers, types of staff, etc., as and when you might need to in these changing times. And believe me, they're changing so fast, and we can't know exactly what those changes are going to look like moving forward. We do know what the changes are coming in terms of job seeker and job keeper. Access to loans has been extended. A whole range of different economic measures are there, but you might need to do some serious looking at how your business is going to navigate those things. It's incredibly important to continue to be communicating with your staff regularly and often. In a vacuum of information, people will fill it with assumption, and you don't want that. You want them hearing from you in terms of where your business is at and what's happening and what they need to perhaps do to help the business. Invite them to make suggestions, contributions, etc. Staff feel so much better when they're as informed as it's reasonable for you to do, and that where they can be potentially part of the solution. So do communicate frequently and often. Tune into our webinar every Thursday at 5:30. As I said, feel free to go back and have a look and see the fact sheet of our webinar last Thursday on the economic and fiscal outlook. What does it mean for employers? We did a really deep dive there, and it would be worthwhile to go back and have a look at that. Come back to us with any questions, queries, etc. that you might have. We'd be delighted to answer them. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you've got any specific questions about your business or you want us to help you out, contact us anytime via email, Facebook, website, LinkedIn, YouTube. You can also, of course, call us 1300 856 231. We'd be delighted to hear from you and to spend some time to speak with you. So on Thursday this week, which is our next webinar, I really look forward to seeing everybody for the next in our webinar series. And of course, each week is a deep dive into a particular HR topic or scenario or interview. And this Thursday, I'm delighted to be interviewing Tina Allen, the Secretary Manager at Quirindi RSL Club, the second biggest employer in Quirindi, New South Wales, sharing her experiences of putting an updated HR and work health and safety framework in place at the club, why they did it, how they're meeting their obligations and minimising risk, and what's involved. Clubs and pubs, of course, have been some of the most significantly impacted businesses during this COVID-19 time. So it's going to be fascinating talking to Tina about her regionally based business in what's been incredibly challenging times. So tell all your colleagues, family and friends to join us, and tune in at 5:30 on Thursday afternoon. We'd be delighted to have you then. In the meantime, please hug the people that you're allowed to and that you can. Wave cheerily at those that you can't. Stay safe, stay socially distant. Please continue to practice that fantastic hand hygiene, and we'll really look forward to seeing you at our next webinar this Thursday, and then again next Monday for our weekly COVID safe update. Thank you for joining us.